International, www.netyahinternational.org.
Joe has searched the Scriptures. This will be apparent. He sought to know who God is, and during this search, he continues to see God through the eyes of a people that have searched for God for so long. And he asked the question also, how can Christians today not minister to folks over in the Middle East who have hoped for the Christ and needed him so desperately? Some have called Joe a world-class Bible scholar, and he is. But what's most remarkable about Joe to me is that he continues to use his language skills and his personal skills to talk with people all over the world, and he's telling them about the Messiah. And Joe, we're very glad to have you here this morning. I'd like you to come tell us about your work and about how God is at work in our world.
Thank you, Brian. It's better for somebody that doesn't know you to introduce you than somebody that knows you, like Wendell Broom. It could have proven embarrassing for Wendell to introduce me, or for Gwyneth Curtis or somebody else that know me a little bit better than they could have embarrassed me. This way, Brian said exactly what I told him to say. And I appreciate it. It's been one of the most difficult times for me to leave Israel. My wife is at home with my daughter. Last Thursday, my daughter got her commission as a lieutenant in the Israeli army. And my wife wanted to be there for that ceremony. However, she went to the base, and she went to the wrong gate, and they wouldn't let her in. So she waited outside the base all this time while the ceremony was going on, and then had to come home without being in the ceremony and not being with me here either. But they are at home in Israel, and Lord willing, my wife may come here in time to participate in the lectureship at ACU next week. But the congregation in Jerusalem is also as difficult to leave them, because almost every night there is Scud attacks on Israel, not on Jerusalem, but the siren sounds anyway, and everybody still has to go into the sealed rooms and put on their gas masks. And when this fair started on the 16th of January, all the churches and the synagogues suspended their services. And we decided in our congregation that we are not going to let Saddam Hussein write our agenda for us. And we are going to meet anyway, sealed the meeting room in the church, and brought our gas masks on, and kept on praising God and didn't deny him the worship and the praise that he so rightly deserves. And last Sunday I learned that in the middle of the worship service, the siren sounded, there was a Scud attack on Tel Aviv, and everybody put on his gas mask and kept on praising God with their gas mask on. For some of them, it was an improvement in their looks for sure. That's what they said about me. I had shaved my beard for the first time since 1969. And then it's now short because I started growing it the day that I left Israel, when I didn't any longer have to put on my gas mask. But the day I graduated from David Lipscomb College, I decided that I'm not going to shave. I was forced to shave at David Lipscomb for so long, and then I decided that's it. And I grew it all along till now, and my family couldn't recognize me when I came out shaved, because they had never seen me without a beard. But it was a very difficult time to leave, and I decided to come anyway, because I feel that this trip and the encouragement that we can give to Christians here in America during this time is very important. The church in Jerusalem can get along just fine without me. I decided, instead of talking a lot about the war now during the worship service in 30 minutes, to actually share with you a thought that I've had on my mind in the last few months about the church. We always divide our world between the saved and the unsaved. That's the standard terminology that is used by Christians in dividing the world, right? The saved and the unsaved. However, there is a division in the New Testament, in the Gospels, that we don't use very much. And that is between those who are smart and those who are stupid. The world is divided between smart people and stupid people. Also, not only between the wise, not only between the saved and the unsaved, but also between the wise and the foolish. And we have two parables in the New Testament which demonstrate that division. And in Jewish literature of the time, in the first century, that was a whole genre. There were many, many parables and stories about the wise and the foolish. And two of them, which existed in the Jewish world, were quoted or used by Jesus to show us this division between the wise and the foolish. The first of these stories everybody knows, and that is, what is it? The wise and the foolish. That's right, the wise man that built his house on the rock, and the foolish man that built his house on the sand, right? And the second one, what is it? Who can tell me from the little children? It's not about men, it's about women. Yeah? Not only men can be wise and foolish. And I'm glad that there's two stories in the New Testament and not one. It was the wise and the foolish virgins in Matthew 25. Now, it's very, very important for us to think about these stories in light of our modern world. See, the foolish man that built his house upon the sand thought that he was wise. There is nobody that is foolish that thinks that he is foolish. Even the greatest fools have a good reason for being fools. And this man thought, look, if I build my house on this sand, there'll be no problem. I will build it faster, I will build it cheaper, and by the time that this fool over there is trying to dig in the rock with an air hammer and going, I'll be already sitting on my porch, drinking a mint julep and enjoying life. And the other guy is still going to be digging on the rock. It's going to cost him more, it's going to be more difficult, and it's going to take him longer. And by the time winter comes, I will already long enjoy my new house. That's how the foolish man was thinking. It's going to be cheaper, faster, and easier to do it on the sand. You remember the stories, children, of the three little pigs? That is the Gentile version of the Jewish story of the wise man and the foolish man. And but it has the same moral of the story. It's actually the same story. The pig that was working all along and building his house from bricks, from stone, yeah? The other two pigs that built from wood and from straw finished long before him. And they were making fun of him because he is still working while they were already enjoying life. And when the wolf came, they ran to his house because their houses were gone. The wolf blew and the house of straw disappeared. In our story, the same idea. When the floods came down, when the rains came down and the floods came up, the house that was built on the sand was destroyed. Now, the moral of the story in the New Testament is that those that only hear the words of Jesus and don't do them are the fools. Yes, they go to church to hear the words of Jesus. Yes, they participate in worship. Yes, they give of their means. Yes, they sing without an instrument. Yes, they do whatever everybody else does around them. But that's all. They're considered the fools. You see, the intention of the man that built his house on the sand was good intention. He wanted to build a house and to live in it. He had good intention, and he might have had even good materials. But he didn't think of the worst possible scenario that could have happened. He wasn't prepared for the worst. He was very optimistic. He hoped for the best. He wanted to have success and to have it quickly and easily and cheaply. That's what he wanted. He didn't go there to build a house that will fall down. He went there to build a house that will stand. But he didn't think forward enough and consider all the possibilities and the worst scenario that might happen to him. I think that the short-sightedness, the not thinking ahead and not planning for long term and not having a vision for where we are heading for, is a trend or maybe a characteristic of the modern Western civilization. People are not thinking of what's going to be tomorrow. They are only thinking of the momentary pleasure and of the instant gratification of their passions and dreams. This is why there are people demonstrating against the war, because they want to have peace now. They're not considering what kind of world their children will grow up in the next generation. They're not considering of the outcome of totalitarian control of 60% of the oil resources in the world. And what that would do to their economy in the long run, what that would do to their culture in the long run, what that will do when there are going to be plastic bags to be used for the garbage in the United States of America and in the rest of the world. But this is also true on the spiritual level. Now I want to go to the second story and see both the similarities and the differences between the two stories. The second story also has foolish and wise. Now, if we look at that, we'll see the same type of situation with this. Who goes to a wedding carrying a half-a-gallon jug of oil with him? All dressed up, nice, white dresses, everything. They're walking around with their lamps, and 5 stupid maidens are carrying extra oil with them. The other ones are looking at them, they don't trust the bridegroom. They think the bridegroom is going to be late. They don't have any faith in the bridegroom and in the wedding party. And look at this, that oil could spill, they could mess up their dress. What for all these things? That's how they would have thought. And there would be no answer in the mouth of the 5 ladies that took with them the extra oil to tell these girls. Whatever they would say would be held against them. Why are you carrying this extra oil? Well, maybe the bridegroom will have a flat tire. Yeah? When is the last time you were in a wedding and the bridegroom had a flat tire? Yeah? Why are you carrying this extra oil? Well, maybe, his mother-in-law will try to keep him a little longer. Yeah? Oh, he doesn't care about his mother-in-law at all. Don't you know him? Whatever would happen, it would look foolish to go to a wedding and to take extra oil with you. But you see, these wise, what is called wise maidens, yeah, wise virgins, took in account the worst possible scenario. They took in account that maybe along the way something might happen. That the bridegroom would be late. That the village where the bride is coming from might hold them a little bit longer. Yeah? And they were prepared for the worst. They thought ahead of time and prepared for the worst. They weren't thinking only of themselves and their pleasure. Now the ones that didn't have the oil thought, well, you know, if he's late, we'll go to the grocery store. We have a 24-hour a day, you know, grocery store in our village, and we'll buy some. And that's what really happened. When the bridegroom delayed and they fell asleep and the candles went out and they asked for oil from the 5 that had the oil, they told them, go to the grocery store. There's plenty at the grocery store and buy it. And they also had good intentions. They went to the wedding, they dressed up right, they brought their oil lamps, they intended to participate and to dance and to rejoice with the bridegroom and the bride in the wedding. They didn't have bad intentions. The only thing that they didn't think is of what is going to be the worst possible scenario. And this is the characteristic of a part of our cultural environment and of a part of our religious environment in America. We are reacting so often, so much to the immediate rather than having prepared for the future. The way one of the members of the church in Jerusalem says, we are always conquered by the urgent and never get to do the important. Yeah? And both in the case of the virgins, yeah, the urgency to go and seek for the oil and to go to the grocery store made them miss the bridegroom. And the other ones, they were relaxed. They were prepared for the worst. They didn't have to go running around looking for oil at midnight, and they turned out to be the wise. Now the same thing is true when we are talking about evangelism, when we are talking about reaching our communities and reaching across the sea and reaching in other things. A lot of times there is no way that we can be happy with the evangelists and the missionaries that we have in the field. You know why? Because we don't know what we really want from them. We don't know what are they exactly supposed to do and what they are supposed to accomplish and what could happen in the worst possible scenario. We don't have a vision for a long time because our men go to these fields and stay a short time. And no matter how hard they would work, we can't evaluate it because we don't have their job description properly planned ahead of time. And if they work as hard as they want, nobody can be happy with them because nobody knows how to define that happiness. And frustration sets in, both in the people in the field and in the people at home. We are a people that everything in our life is got to be quick, got to be cheap, and got to be easy. And the same thing is, if you notice, you turn on the television and you look what is in the religious marketplace in America. What are the people watching? How come Jimmy Swaggart has $143 million budget per year? Yeah? and the others as well. What is being offered? It is what is quick, what is instant, and what is easy. Nobody dares to hand a difficult message. Nobody dares to say, you people have got to change and to repent and to grovel and to cry and to beg God that He should forgive you. It was very interesting in the Jerusalem Post newspaper about 12 days ago. There was an article that the Russian foreign minister, the new one, his name is Besmertnik. You know what Besmertnik means in Russian? It means the guy who will never die, the eternal one, the guy who raised from the dead. Yeah, that's the name of the Russian foreign minister. And you know what the meaning of the name of the general in Saudi, the American general in Saudi Arabia is? Schwarzkopf. It means blackhead. Am I right, Gwyneth? Blackhead. So we have the Russian is, you know, the resurrected man, and the American is the blackhead. It's all right. But this Besmertnik was in Paris, and he was talking to Mitterrand, and the Israeli ambassador in France met him in some affair there in Paris, and the Russian apologized to Israel, to the ambassador, to the Israeli ambassador, for two things. One is for condemning Israel very severely in 1981 when Israel bombed the Iraqi nuclear reactor. And second of all, for having armed Iraq over the last 20 years without listening to the Israeli admonition not to arm Iraq. Now the Russian apologized. It wasn't easy for him to do so. He admitted his fault. And it's not easy for any one of us to do so. But if we want to be wise, yeah, we have got to take into account a long term. We have got to understand that it pays to have the hard, the slow, but the sure way of walking with God. Yeah. The instant, the cheap, and the quick, and the easy have never gotten anybody very far. And that's also a part of the Middle East mentality, both Arab and Jewish. You know, an Arab will have maybe 2 suits. An Arab businessman may have only 2 suits, not 10, 2 suits. But they will be made by a tailor from English material, from the best that he knows how to buy. That's why in Jerusalem there is more Mercedes than in any, or in the Arabian countries, there is more Mercedes than any other car. And in Jerusalem, all the taxi drivers, all the taxis are also Mercedes. You know why? It costs more. But the Arab knows, even though it costs more, it's more expensive, and it's not going to change a car every 2 or 3 years. Yeah? But it's going to last longer also, and in the long run, it's going to be cheaper and wiser. So even poor people, yeah, they may buy a car only once every 15 years, but they will buy one that will last them. Yeah? And that's a part of the mentality. And when we translate that mentality to the church, then we also see the admonition of Jesus. Yeah? Yes, the guy who built his house on the sand did it cheaper than the guy who built his house on the rock. Yes, he finished quicker. Yes, he already enjoyed his mint julep on the porch, while the other guy was still with the air hammer digging on the rock. But the test of our faith is when we have difficulties. The test of our faith is not in time of peace and prosperity. It is in time of trial and tribulation and hardship. And that's the test of anything, actually. It's a test of marriage. It's a test of job. It is a test of every human condition. We know from what we are made, and if we are wise and if we are foolish during the time of crisis. And this is the amazing thing about the Israelis. I've got another minute. This is the amazing things about the Israelis and the Jewish people. They have always prepared for the worst and hoped for the best. Even during the most dark years of anti-Semitism in Europe, they always never lost hope. They were being taken into the gas chambers and they were saying, it's going to be okay, don't worry. But they always also prepared for the long term. That's why every Jewish mother knows when her child is going to grow up, is going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and in the worst case, maybe a dentist. Because they are thinking ahead of time, and they start preparing the minds of the kids ahead of time as what they're going to be, and they invest in that education of their children. And this mentality has got to enter from these parables also into our practical Christian collective way of doing things, into our mind. It's easy. In Jerusalem we've seen missionaries that they were as bright as the comet. Oh, they were bright. Everybody loved them. Everybody was so excited by them. But they came and went. You know who accomplished the work? The gray guys. The guys that stayed there without much fanfare, without much excitement, without much reward. Slowly, but surely, doing the work of God. They are the ones who make the difference in our work and in the Lord's kingdom. And I think that when we talk about church growth, when we talk about stability in God's kingdom, we have to think in these terms. We have to hope for the best. We all hope that it's going to be quick, and that it's going to be easy, and that it's going to be cheap. But we also have to prepare for the worst, and dig in the rock, and take our time, and do a job with a vision for the future, and for our children's children to enjoy the bliss of knowing the Messiah, of knowing Jesus as their Savior, and having a better world and a better church than the one that we grew up in. May God bless all of you and help every individual here to think in terms of biblical wisdom. It's not easy to become a Christian. Yes, you may have to give up a lot. It may cost you. You may have to dig on the rock. But in time of difficulty, it'll pay. A few months ago, I had a call from the deputy head of the Mossad. You know what the Mossad is? The Mossad is the Israeli CIA, the Israeli intelligence. I had a call from the deputy head of the Israeli intelligence, and he invited me for lunch. And I wondered what was there, I knew him from family connections. I've known him for many years. What does he want from me? Years I haven't heard from him. What does he want from me? He invited me for lunch, and he told me right up front what he wants. He wanted to know if there is a real practical advantage to belief in Jesus Christ. Not in the heavens, not after my death, but what do I gain from it now? That was his question as soon as we sat down at the table to eat lunch. We spent 3 hours talking about that. And you know what my answer was? It was the ability to cope with personal disaster and disappointment in time of crisis. My faith has helped me cope with disease, with death, with disappointment, with betrayal, with every possible thing that the normal man would be crushed by. When the floods came up and the rains came down, I was able to stand because I know who my Redeemer is and what price He paid for my redemption. And I know that the power of the Holy Spirit is available for me to harness and to use in order to give up what I want and to let Him do through me what He wants. And he was amazed. And I quoted to him one of the prayers that is in standard Christian history. Lord, give me the wisdom to know, the difference between what I can change and what I cannot change. I know it in Hebrew, but I'm not quoting it right in English. And he said, could you please have that written down? I'd like to have an artist do it and hang it in my office. And I had one of the artists in our congregation do it, and we framed it, and we gave it to him, and he photographed it and put it in every office in his whole department. Because this is where the gain is in being a Christian. It's not only the good time religion, we want the old time religion that gives us the strength to cope with our lives, that are not always strawberry and cream, but sometimes they could be spinach, or they could even be an enema. And this is what being a Christian is all about. And if you're not a Christian and you want that additional strength from God through the Holy Spirit, you come forward as we stand and sing.
Nativia International, www.netivyahinternational.org.